nobody's born with skates on. When you're 4, 5, 6, 7 years old and you get out there and the first thing that you do is you fall. And the first thing you learn is to get back up.
Welcome everyone to Hockey Culture. This is the place where we're trying to change the culture of hockey, one interview at a time. Another special Stanley Cup edition of Hockey Culture. We've got Bryant McBride, the former first Black exec in the National Hockey League, now the CEO of Burst. Bryant, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Anson, for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, I mentioned how you're the first Black exec in the National Hockey League. Take us back to when you were first hired by Gary Bettman, and what was it like working for the National Hockey League?
It was an exciting time. It was an incredible time. The game was in transition of sorts. The prior administration did lots of things to bring the game to where it was, but Gary's mandate was to take it to new levels, which he has absolutely done. And I think part of that effort that he wanted to instill was to add some fresh viewpoints and bring people, young people in with energy from different backgrounds, different opinions. I grew up in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Canada as a hockey player. Was able to go to some good schools, lucky enough to go to some good schools. Gary and the administration at that time saw that, and they gave me the opportunity to be part of that, and it was an incredible time.
You've got your fingerprints all over diversity in the game of the NHL, starting the Hockey's for Everyone program, and also hiring Willie O'Ree. Talk about those two big initiatives. First, Hockey's for Everyone, and then what made you decide to go back and find Willie O'Ree?
Yeah, Hockey is for Everyone. It wasn't some preordained brainchild. It was a quick survey of the landscape, both professionally and personally. And personally, it was always a sore point for me that I'd never played with a teammate of color. And here I was at the NHL with an opportunity to change that. And I was hell-bent on doing it and to make the game more inclusive, make the game more welcoming. That was the mission that started, a little over 25 years ago, and with Gary's blessing and his help. He jumped in both feet. I don't think he gets enough credit for that. He's been an advocate from day one. And could we all do more? Yeah, sure. Can he do more? Yeah, sure. But he has been behind this from very early on. So we started to put the pieces together. There was I was hired as to lead business development, not diversity and inclusion, or to start a program to help at-risk kids or boys and girls to get access to the game. But I just felt it was imperative. It was really important to the game from a moral standpoint, from a business standpoint, from all standpoints. So dove in both feet and started to identify programs like ice hockey in Harlem, the Mariucci Inner City Hockey Program in Minnesota, Jack Adams in Detroit, Fort DuPont under Neil Henderson in Washington, D.C., and just asked them what they needed and how they could expand and how they could grow. That started with those 4 programs, and it quickly expanded to 30, about where it is today, and it continues. So the seeds that we planted and watered have taken root, and now it's time to help them even further. So that was the diversity, initially the diversity task force. Now Hockey is for Everyone. I knew who Willie was growing up, and I was reminded by Lou Vero at USA Hockey, great coach in the U.S. Hockey system for many, many years, continues to be administrator there. And just through, there was no Google at the time, dating myself, but through some resourcefulness, we found Willie. I called some friends at the FBI who helped me find him, and we found him. And I got to tell you, Anson, it was one of the most memorable phone calls of my life. He was this historic guy that everyone knew who he was, but to talk to him and then to sit with him and meet with him, he's just the most authentic, humble, amazing person I think I've ever met. And I asked him if he wanted to do something to help all kids get access to the game, and he was immediate in his response. And how do I help? I'll do anything to help. And he meant it. And that was more than 25 years ago.
We talk about professional networks. I talked to Javier Gutierrez about that and expanding and making it more diverse. And you were a big reason why Eustace King was brought into the NHL fan family. And now Yui as I affectionately call him. I'm good friends with him now. He's an agent with O2K Sports. He's a friend of hockey culture. He also represented Willie O'Ree. How important is that, to come full circle with the professional networks and expanding those and making those more diverse?
We did an event. It's a great question, and I think it's really emblematic of what's gonna make this grow and what's gonna make this explode. We did an event called the Willie O'Ree All-Star Game, where we brought the best defined by academics, citizenship, dedication to hockey, 10 to 12-year-old boys and girls. We brought them to Chicago for the Willie O'Ree All-Star Game from all over the country, and these kids were the creme de la creme of their programs. Not necessarily the best hockey players. That didn't matter, right? We wanted those kids who really had a dedication and love of the game, like Willie. And although Willie was a great player. So, we recruited volunteers in Chicago to help us out. And I'm constantly seeing this guy who's lifting bags and tying skates, helping kids get ready. And I'm like, who is that guy? And all weekend, and we finally got a chance to say hello, and it was Eustace King. It was Huey, and he just, he was terrific. The next week I get back and he was working at Leo Burnett, top job, and I found out he was a great goalie at the University of Miami of Ohio, where he had an great career and really respected player. And I got back and I said to Gary Bettman, we need to hire more people of color, and we need to do it now. And he said, yeah, absolutely. Do you have anyone in mind? And I said, I met this guy. And a week later, Eustace was in the office and interviewing, and he's never looked back. We opened the door a tiny crack, and he ran through it. And he hasn't stopped yet, doing great things, representing lots of great players of color and other players around the game. And just a super respected guy that just, from the beginning, just gave heart and soul to the game, and he continues to do it.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch Huey kind of climb that ladder and become a quote-unquote super agent within the game. TJ Oshie, Jason Zucker, Troy Stetcher, and just name a few players who he represents, Wayne Simmons. But he also represents Willie O'Ree, too. And I want to talk about the documentary. You produce and executive produce the documentary Willie O'Ree. Why is the movie timely today?
Yeah, it's timely. We did the film about 2.5 years ago, right? It was way pre-George Floyd, and the film was a labor of love. It was an effort to showcase and to promote, Willie's candidacy for the Hockey Hall of Fame. Frankly, we thought it was generational, and it was really important that people know the inside of his story. The director of the film, Laurence Mathieu Leger, did an amazing job of framing that and filming it in a style in verite, basically, where you were a fly on the wall. So it's a film that wraps many threads. Canadian, American, young, old. It was an effort to showcase that the game is diverse, right? So we tried to make a hockey film, but so really a social justice film disguised as a hockey movie, right? To show that this game is for everyone, to show the impact that Willie has had and what he went through, but most importantly, that this is still going on, right? Willie he didn't play a game where he wasn't called a name on the ice or in the locker room or in an arena. And he's now almost 2 weeks, he's 85 years old, right? And the fact that it's still happening, enough already, right? And we showcase that in the movie really poignantly, really precisely, and all wrapping it into a film that is educational, that is entertaining, that people take something away from.
Yeah, big theme you always talk about, because we spent a lot of time together. I traveled with you as a moderator for this film, holding Q&As afterwards. You talk about positive deviance and how that, explain to the audience how that is related to the film and what you're trying to do with the Willie documentary also.
Yeah, there's things that have historically happened in hockey, but largely, in society, right? That just the systemic racism that exists, throughout North America. It has been built with insidious intent. It is in the laws. It's in the cracks and crevices of everything that we do, that this country and that North America does. And anyone that wants to refute that, I'm happy to discuss it with them. The facts are the facts, and the disinformation around this area is disturbing. You know, the clash, if you will, in the American experiment is land of the free, home of the brave, liberty, and life and love and everything, you know, place that you can grow and do amazing things, versus slavery. And that schism has never really been dealt with. It's never been talked about. It's an ugly wound that continues to fester and hurt everything that this country can and should be. So our small effort to paint positivity around that, to showcase what has happened, but to showcase and put forth examples of what's possible, with Willie being the flag bearer there, was the intent. That's the hope.
And also allyship too. You know, this can't be done just by people of color or Black people. You need to have allyship. And I believe when you watch the film, I think you guys did a tremendous job explaining allyship by bringing Willie's best friends, who he's been friends with from the time he was a little kid, and getting them involved in the movie also.
It's a great point. There is I think it is incredibly rare on film to see two men, one white, one Black, with a 70-year plus relationship, friendship, depicted in film. In this case, I'm speaking of Junior Doherty, one of Willie's best friends and one of the greatest people you'll ever meet. Just such an incredible gentleman. You know, he and Willie were best friends in the 1940s, right? And it's just continued all the way through until today, where they talk all the time, and Willie's had very few supporters like Junior. So kind of chronicling it from those people, from Junior and the people in Fredericton, New Brunswick, who you know firmly believed that if you give every young person in the community a chance to succeed, Willie being amongst them, although he was one of very, very few Black people in Fredericton in the 30s and 40s and 50s, if you give them all the attributes and all the tools that they had at their disposal to succeed, then amazing things could happen. And Willie is proof positive of that. That goes through Junior Doherty, the Mazzuccas, all of these amazing people in Fredericton that made Willie's path that made Willie's path possible in a lot of ways. He worked really hard. His family was instrumental, but there's just such a well of goodwill that comes out of that city, that in a lot of Canadian cities. You grew up in Canada, I did as well, where they just want most of these communities gave people the opportunity to succeed, and people grabbed it.
This is the perfect example of explaining and showcasing why sports is so big and so important to the culture, everyday society. And I know my friends would always complain, and they'd always say, well, athletes are paid too much money, but look at the impact that sports has. You know, it's almost a year today. I went to El Paso and I saw firsthand the effect that sports can have on helping a community heal, bringing together, it's a border town, border city, El Paso and Juarez, across the border there in Mexico, and seeing Team Mexico for the first time play against El Paso Rhinos, helping that community heal after that tragic Walmart shooting. And then you're talking about Willie and his white friend, that at the time, race relations back in the 40s, they weren't what they were today. And they're not perfect today, but they're definitely a lot worse than they were today. And to see that common theme and that fabric of sports being that one thing, that one element that really brings people together, I mean, it really is eye-opening. It really shows the importance of sports. Don't you agree?
It's a critical point. It's such an important point. You know, probably the greatest example of that, you know, in American, you know, in the American canon is Jackie Robinson, and him crossing that line, and Pee Wee Reese putting his arm around him, and hey, we're basically saying we're equals, and this guy is my equal and my teammate and someone who has my back and I have his back, right? That type of bond is it's best, and it's often, you know, exemplified in sport, because it's an equal playing field. It's literally saying we're going to treat you equally. We are not going to subjugate you. We are not going to say stay in your place any longer, right? So that breakthrough, if you will, can then transcend to other places. So that I think is an important effect that sport can have. Moreover, and I think an equally important point, and there's just so many examples of things that awful things that happen to people of color, BIPOC people, and you just people shake their heads, and you let your white friends know, and they can't believe it. They're shocked that this is happening, and you just so we could dwell on that, and there have been a lot of those that have happened. But I think the key here to unlock the future and to go forward beyond all of those ugly incidents, and they continue today, don't get me wrong, and they're really important that people understand the prevalence and the hurt caused by those ugly incidents. But what sport does more than anything else is I'm in a rink every October through March at 6 a.m. on Saturday mornings in Lexington, Massachusetts, as basically a guy helping out, right? My kids have graduated, but I'm the deputy commissioner of in-house hockey. And I love it. I love it. It's just, and the reason I love it, and it dovetails with the reason that I argue with my friends of color all the time. Hockey is the most important sport for kids to play. And what are you talking about? What do you mean? That you're not welcome in rinks, and they call you the N-word. No, you don't understand. What it does is it's that equalizer again. Back to your original question. Nobody's born with skates on. When you're 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, and you get out there, and the first thing that you do is you fall, and the first thing you learn is to get back up. I'm a dad. And if there's one thing that I want for my children, if there's only one thing I can give for my children, is to teach them resiliency, that muscle to get back up no matter what. As a person of color, you need that. And you're going to need it over and over again. And that muscle that you learn on those skates to get back up over and over again, and that 6-month ascendancy when you're a little kid, or whether you're an adult learning how to play hockey, it's a muscle that you can use for STEM, that you can use for every other piece of growth and learning in your life forever. It teaches you that you can, no matter what. That's the importance of sport, and the importance of this sport, hockey in particular, for kids of color.
Well, you also mentioned too, when you grew up, you never played with any other players of color. I was fortunate. I always had another black player on my team. There's 5 of us on my Wexford Raiders Tier 2 Junior B Ontario Championship team, and I had 5 other players of color on my team in Edmonton too. But it also teaches you to be comfortable walking into a room where nobody else looks just like you. A lot of my friends growing up in Toronto would say to me, Anson, we stopped playing hockey because, quote unquote, it wasn't a black sport anymore because there's nobody playing that looked like me. But sometimes you might go into a business meeting, you're an executive now, and you might walk into a room and there isn't anybody of color that looks like you. But playing hockey would teach you to feel comfortable being in that environment, would it not?
Absolutely. I mean, I grew up in Sault Ste. Marie, way north of you, but similar experience, right? Where I had to learn how to navigate in white spaces. Sault Ste. Marie was a town at the time of 75,000 people, of which 15 were black, and I was related to half of them. So I had to figure stuff out, man. And if you were not buttoned up, and if you did not represent your family in a certain way, Willie had to do the same thing in Fredericton, then it was noticed, and it was noticed quickly. So I had to be on my game at all times. It was hard though at times where someone would say something or do something, and you just kind of shake your head. But it wasn't, interestingly, it wasn't one of the top 5 things that I thought about when I was walking out of my house to start my day, or to go to practice, or to go to school, or whatever, right? It just wasn't. And that became the case when I moved down to the US, where race became one of the first 2 or 3 things that you have to think about, in terms of navigating white and mostly white spaces or not, right? So throughout my professional career, been lots of situations where, and you've been there too, where you're the only person of color, the only BIPOC person in within miles of that situation or that meeting. And hockey did give me an advantage, I think, because I had practiced and honed those skills to the point where I could not just survive but thrive and succeed.
Well, here in the US, as you mentioned, it's rare that you see the red and the blues, Democrats and Republicans, ever agree on anything. And as we start to slowly creep our way towards the elections, you're going to see that even bigger divide between both parties. But the one thing that both parties seem to agree on is the Congressional Gold Medal Act, which would honor Willie for his extraordinary contributions and commitment to hockey, inclusion, and recreational opportunity. What's your thoughts about that you're seeing all these Congress people, men and women on both sides of the aisle, pushing for this to happen for Willie?
It's awesome. And I mean, hats off to Kim Davis and Rob Woolley and the team that has spearheaded that effort. Finding something that people in Washington can agree on is very difficult these days, unfortunately. But, once they understand who Willie is and or have the opportunity to meet him, it's done, right? He just one story that captures Willie that is not well known, that I'll share with you, that whenever I'm talking to a congressperson or talking to somebody in that realm about whether they should support this bill, and I've talked to a number of them, in Willie's office, you'll see in the film, if you watch the film, it's on Peacock for free. It's on the free tier and the paid tier, so make sure to do it. You'll enjoy it. Watch it with your family. In Willie's office, he has a lot of his memorabilia and his awards and things that commemorate all that he's done, which is a huge volume. And he's one of the winners of the Order of Canada, which is the highest civilian honor given by the Canadian government. It is a huge deal. There's very few people who've ever been selected for that award. And there it is, this big, beautiful framed plaque on his wall, and it's incredible. And right next to it are two plaques from when I first met Willie, when he was a security guard at the Hotel Del Coronado in San Diego. And those plaques signify his selection as Employee of the Year. And they sit right next to each other. All work's important. All work matters. He is the most humble, gracious person, not a bitter bone in his body. He's been through so much, but he's come out the other side of it with a huge smile on his face, with the energy still and the ability to inspire. I can think of literally no better and more deserving, person to receive that award.
And you mentioned the doc, which can be found on Peacock, home of the NBC Sports family. It's more than just a documentary, though, right? There's a bigger play towards this documentary with terms of educating young people around the story of Willie O'Ree and how inclusion and diversity is an important part of young people figuring out how to deal with people going forward as they get older.
That's exactly right. I mean, our intent is to share this film far and wide. We were very fortunate to enter 9 festivals. We won prizes at 4 of those film festivals. Again, speaking to the quality of the film, the brilliance of Laurence, what she created. And by the way, I should mention fantastic support from a wonderful group of investors that included Ted Leonsis and Sheila Johnson and Earl Stafford and Dr. Joel Boyd. I mean, just, it harkens back to your comments about Eustace earlier. There is a broad, vast community quietly that has been built and is building. We have not been out front. We have not been sticking our chests out. Oh, gee, look how great we are. Look what we're doing. Look how important we are. Not our style. Our style is to do the work. And this film does the work. And it's one piece of the work. And we're going to continue to do the work, no matter what. Right? Sorry to get strident, but I have to be. And so the film has been built. What we needed it for and wanted it for was to honor Willie first and foremost, but for generational impact. We need a piece of scalable content that would live forever to say to kids, this is important. This sport is important. You are important. And your involvement in this sport is important. And you can change the world by being involved in this and doing something that matters. Right? By opening doors and giving kids the opportunity to play, to participate. And that's what this group, Ted, Sheila, Earl, Joel, Charles Bracken, just amazing people some people have never heard of, but they wrote checks. They have done tons of heavy lifting. And now we are poised to roll this out far and wide. We were fortunate enough to be chosen by the program called the American Film Showcase, which works with the U.S. State Department to bring the film to consulates and embassies around the world. And we are going to roll this film out to 20, 30, 40, 50 countries over the next 2 years in conjunction with the State Department, with the Government of Canada and others. And we are going to take this film to thousands, make it accessible to thousands of educators and students to tell this story and to showcase the importance of what has transpired and, as a result of Willie's work, and how to carry it forward. That's what we're up to.
And I'm sure all hockey fans know who Ted Leonsis is, but they might not know who Sheila Johnson is. She's a partner in Monumental Sports, and Earl Stafford, same thing. 2 Black minority partners, owners in Monumental Sports with Ted Leonsis, all three, I should say, Stanley Cup champions. And also Dr. Boyd, longtime NHL team doctor, who is also on the Executive Inclusion Council with the National Hockey League. So these are powerful people that felt like Willie's story was worth it for them to personally invest and get that message out there.
It's such an important point because, again, these people have flown under the radar. I have flown under the radar. This is the first podcast I think I've done, or one of very few that I've done. I've got a face for radio, so I avoid TV and podcasts a lot. But no, in all seriousness, this group has just done the work. And I can't even start to name all the people because I'd be remiss. I'd leave someone out. I've just highlighted a few, but there are hundreds, thousands of people who have been pulling on this oar for a long time. And it's great to see others come along and heighten the visibility of it. Case in point is the HDA. Fantastic, brave. It's great what they're doing, but we got to do the work. And this group's been doing the work for a long time, and we welcome people like the HDA and Black Girls Hockey Club with Renee Hess, fantastic, and others to join us in doing the work. Measurable outcomes, transparency, measurable outcomes, and accountability from all parties in the game to have effective programs like getting the film in front of educators for free and students for free, with a teacher's guide to talk about, and all for free. Again, I got to underline free, to talk about social justice in a positive, constructive way that is not about opinion, it's about facts. And it empowers young people to carry that torch forward. So those, Sheila, Ted, Earl, they're just legendary people who they do lots of things, but their work here has just been incredible.
Yeah, before I let you go, I want to remind fans to make sure they go to Peacock to look for Willie the documentary. It's a must watch. I've seen it 1,000 times. I'll watch it 1,001 times. You get something new out of it every single time you watch it. In addition to that, Brian, there's also the book coming out too. Willie, the game-changing story, the NHL's first Black player, coming out October 20th. So there's a lot of people that are interested in telling Willie's story, and there's a lot of people out there that are interested in learning about Willie's story also.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know that Willie and Eustace, I have not really had anything to do with the book, to be fair, because I know though that it is a super strong product, and that Willie and Eustace and others, the people at Penguin have put heart and soul into it, and I think it's it's going to be a great addition to the work and testament to the work that Willie has done over such a long period of time. So yeah, when that book is available, it's going to be just before the holidays. You can't think of a better present for your kids. Make sure you look it up and find it and buy it. I was lucky enough to be involved years ago in a very thin paperback version of a children's book that we did very early on when Willie started working for us. And that was a bedtime story many nights in my house. My kids grew up hearing about Willie and what he did, and meeting him is still one of the great joys of their lives.
Well, Brian, thank you for joining me on Hockey Culture. I know you've always been about the work. You're also part of the Youth Hockey Inclusion Committee with the National Hockey League. That's another vehicle for you to put in the work like you've been doing for the last 25 years. What do you hope to accomplish in being part of that committee?
I'm incredibly flattered that to be asked to be part of that. There's a great group of people, some of the brightest minds in the game and from outside of the game have been assembled, and I just love the dedication and the importance that the league has put in assembling such a great group of people. Now, what I hope happens, okay, this is critically important, I think, is that we get rigorous. We get very rigorous. We're as close to these issues as anyone, and we know every week, every day, every 40. I don't even know the regularity that when a kid goes into the rink, to get on the ice, they're being called the N-word, or they're feeling unwelcome because they're gay, or because they're trans, or they're just not part of the traditional white hockey culture. That's got to end. That has to end. So I'm hell bent on it, and I won't stop until it ends. The world is the world, but in our piece of the world, this is a place for people to be safe, and this is a place for people to be welcomed and to be embraced for their differences. And I hope from those committees that I'm sure from those committees, I don't hope, because I'll do everything that I can, and I know others will too, that there will be rigor brought to this. Let's talk to 800 families of color and see what their experience actually is, so that we can start to figure out a way to have zero tolerance on behavior that is not welcoming, that is not inclusive, that does not reflect well on the game. Because as I'm the bearer of the news. I know a lot of people know this, but I know a lot of people don't. As of 2044, as it is in Canada today, the majority of people in this country will be visible minorities. The game will lose its importance from an economic and cultural standpoint if we do not roll out the welcome mat to everyone. It's 2020. We've got about 25 years to get it right. And that work has started, and that work continues.
Very powerful message, Brian. Thank you again for joining Hockey Culture. Looking forward to having you on again in the near future.
Thanks, Anson. Appreciate it.